I think firstly, it's really important that we get this right, that we carry out accurate assessments of capacity, because if we don't get it right, if our assessments are inaccurate, then there are important ethical implications. And this can also have important consequences in terms of somebody's well-being and health, I would argue. So an accurate assessment can make the difference between somebody being given the opportunity to make an informed decision, which might be a decision about their healthcare, their treatment, the way that they spend their time, the way that their living arrangements, all sorts of aspects of their everyday life. So an accurate assessment can make the difference between somebody being given the opportunity to make that kind of decision and to exercise their right to self-determination as an autonomous person, and someone being denied that opportunity. And if an inaccurate assessment leads the person doing the assessment to conclude that somebody cannot make an informed decision for themselves, then others will be asked to make that decision on their behalf. And we call that substitute decision making. And any substitute decision should be made in the person's best interests, but it might not always represent that person's will and preferences. So this could mean that the decision that is made for that person isn't the right decision for them. And it could lead to that person being dissatisfied with the implications of the decision. So, for example, imagine a situation where somebody made a best interest decision for you, that you should go and live in a care home rather than stay living in your home independently, because that person thought that was the safest thing for you, but that wasn't what you want. How would you feel about that? The other side of the coin is that an inaccurate assessment might lead someone to conclude that someone can make an informed decision when in fact they can't. So in this situation, somebody might make a decision that they don't fully understand, and that can lead to complications later on when the implications or consequences of that decision start to impact on the person's life. So, for example, if it was a decision about a certain treatment, if the person didn't understand the implications of the treatment, then they might not go on to adhere to the treatment recommendations. They might not want to follow the recommendations because they don't fully understand why they're indicated, or they didn't understand the impact of what the treatment might be. So an example there might be, for example, in a hospital setting where somebody consents to have a PEG feeding tube fitted, they may not fully understand that there are long-term implications and consequences of having that PEG tube fitted. They may only understand that it's for treatment whilst they're in hospital. And so when they get home, they may not be happy having the PEG, and they may not want to continue with that. So we need to make sure that people really understand the decisions they're making. And if they can't understand, we need to enable best interest decisions to be made for them. And I think speech and language therapists should be involved, because we have specialist skills in supporting people with disabilities to communicate, to understand, to think about, and to talk about decisions. And these communication abilities are all tested during decision-making capacity assessments or mental capacity assessments. And we know that it's easy for other professionals who don't have the specialist knowledge and skills that we have to make mistakes during these assessments if they don't know how to recognise and support people's communication needs. We have that expertise, so that's why I think we should be involved. I think, first of all, we have a role in educating the people that we work with, our patients, but also their family members and their friends and other supporters, about these legal rights and the support available, or that should be available, to help them to exercise their rights. So I think a lot of people, members of the general public, don't understand that they have the right to make decisions, and that there are legal frameworks, there's legislation to support those rights and to protect those rights. I think we can also educate other professionals working in care settings about these rights and the ways that they can support people with communication disabilities to participate in decision making to the best of their abilities. I think we need to start that education very early on, before professionals start practicing. So when they're students, we can be talking to them about these issues, and that's some work that we're trying to do in the UK. I think we can advocate for our patients, for their rights, but also for their will and preferences when we're talking to their family members, other people in their lives, and other professionals about decisions that they need to make. And I think we can directly contribute our expertise in supporting communication when we're involved in conversations about decisions with people with communication disabilities, or when we're participating in those conversations that are being led by other professionals. So we can help other professionals to communicate better with people with communication disabilities during capacity evaluations and general conversations about decisions. I've just started working with colleagues across the world, really, to develop a research project, as you said. And we're focusing on a particular group of people with aphasia. And we want to look at the ways in which people with aphasia are currently supported to make decisions in different countries. Because I don't think we know much about this. So we're as part of this work, we're interested in whether legislation exists in each country to protect people's decision-making rights, and the nature of that legislation, and also what the role of speech and language therapists or speech and language pathologists is in relation to this, whether there is a particular role that's been described or prescribed. So we're in the very early stages of this work of developing a project, and we think we're going to start by preparing and conducting a survey of SLTs, SLPs, to look at their current practice. So we're looking for more contributors from across Europe and elsewhere in the world to help us develop and disseminate the survey. And we're particularly interested in hearing from people who are able to translate the survey instrument from English to other languages, and also to help us translate the responses back into English to help us with analysis. So if anybody wants to be involved, they're very welcome to email me